Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species, and actually a bit of a confession. It is a bit of a confession. We've been sitting here talking for a long time. And before we even went on air, I'm sitting here talking to Dr. Deborah Lukovich, PhD. And the minute of course, when I discovered her background, I've been chomping at the bit for weeks to get my hands on Dr. Deborah with her background and the things she's doing, depth psychology. My head is spinning. And my head hasn't spun like this, Deborah, in a long, long time, and I just couldn't wait to unload some of the stuff in the spirituality and the unconscious stuff in my life, and I apologize for taking so much time to just deposit this stuff with you, but it's like I have nobody in my world to talk about this stuff with, and you've been great.
Yeah.
So now it's my turn to interview you and to discover your world, which is just such a fascinating world and everything that's going on. I mean, you're a huge wow. And
Oh.
of course, we'll talk about when sex meets God. We just started to talk about that off camera. And just everything about you. It's such a wow and so interesting because, my life is replete for, 15 years with so many things I don't understand.
Hmm.
And it's there, and the people who know me know that these things happen and they're inexplicable, but after spending an hour with you now, they're not so inexplicable.
Yeah. And you've discovered it's a bottomless pit.
Oh, yeah, it sure is. The knowledge, so much. There's so much going on. There's so much energy and vibrations and all kinds of things going on. So you've really helped and illuminate, which is a great word. You've helped illuminate me because this stuff's been inside me for so many years. It's never had a chance to um, uh, to give credibility, to have credibility given to it. And
Yeah.
you've given me some directions, and you give me some reading assignments, which memories, dreams, and reflections. I'm going to read, and maybe I'll read it, and we come back and talk. And of course,
Mhm.
I have to read When Sex Meets God because it's quite provocative. And so uh, this has been my monologue. Uh, it's not quite a Johnny Carson monologue, but monologue nevertheless. And so what a thrill for me to introduce you. And we've got lots of stuff to talk about. So if you want to do a little bit of a background, please do a little bit of a background, and then we will jump in to some questions.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. So, I mean, I think a good place to start is what is depth psychology? And it really is just the study of the unconscious. So, probably a lot of your listeners have maybe heard of Carl Jung. People are more familiar with this series than they realize. If someone has taken the Myers Briggs personality inventory, like if I'm an INFJ, for example, that is based on Carl Jung's theory of psychological type. If people are familiar with the idea of, oh, you have a mommy complex, oh, you have a money complex, complexes are a concept of Carl Jung's. So, and dreams. The unconscious speaks through a dream. So there's an intersection or there's an overlay between depth psychology and spirituality and quantum theory as well. So, some of your listeners may be dabbling a little bit into what is quantum theory? What is this field of infinite possibilities? This waves, we're vibrations, we're not really solid, we're not even really particles, we're just localized energy. And they'll see that there's really overlap between depth psychology and Carl Jung's theories. And also, today's science really is affirming Carl Jung's theories. So it's fascinating. He was quite popular 100 years ago. And for some reason, he I think because he represents your relationship with yourself and harnessing your own power, that there are larger forces that don't like that, right? And so his theories are not as much in conventional therapy schools of therapy, for example. They should be, and there's a comeback of Carl Jung, but his theories really aren't part of like conventional therapeutic models. So it's fascinating to wonder, like, why is that, right? So, and then
Well,
me, I guess like my story these days revolves around my midlife unraveling and reconstruction. And out of that, this is how this book came to be. At a very high level, my midlife unraveling coincided, you'll appreciate this, with this mysterious calling to go pursue a master's PhD in depth psychology without knowing why,
wow.
what I was going to do with it. It costs a lot of money, but I knew it would save my soul.
Wow.
So, what is that about? And so, number one, it became a way I could make sense of my unraveling.
Wow.
And so I knew there was meaning. And then I guess because I experienced all the concepts in real time, I make a really good depth psychology coach. So I can help people apply these theories to their own difficult situations. Or many people who come to me, they don't have to be in crisis. They're people like you. They're very purposeful in their lives, but they are seeking to understand at a deeper level and to really lean into their purpose and to see what they can't see yet. So that's sort of high level of who I am.
Wow. It's so fascinating, that energy that drove you to do that. I have my own energies to do the stuff I'm doing, which is so far removed from what my life could have and was.
Mhm.
And out of the clear blue, the random universe, you do these radical changes, which I'm still trying to comprehend. And that's why I jumped all over you, um, for guidance and and
Yeah.
and my seeking to understand.
Hmm.
And you've turned me on to Jung, and I started reading. And I've got enough stuff to read and do, and but now I'm starting to read. I know I just read this morning he was friends with Sigmund Freud, and they
Hmm.
broke up.
Yeah. So for that's a fascinating story. Freud was his mentor.
Mentor.
He was 17 years older. And you could say Freudian psychology represents the masculine. And here comes Carl Jung, who starts to see something different and challenges that. And you could say that Carl Jung, the study of the unconscious, is the study really of the feminine, because when the feminine was split off, right, and sort of denigrated, it went into the unconscious. So this is why we call the soul as the feminine, right? So, and it was devastating for Jung to have to disagree and part ways with his mentor. He went into actually a 16-year depression and confrontation with his unconscious. And that's now, if you look up the Red Book, so Carl Jung's The Red Book is really the product of his 16 years of confronting what was in his unconscious. And you won't believe the images in it. The Red Book is like this big. It's 150 pages. I have one. It's displayed on my bookcase. And it's like reading sacred text. And so many of his theories then came out of the Red Book. So I mean he has a fascinating story.
Yeah. Wow. That was a little off topic thing. So now I'm gonna. You like off topic, and I know that's
I
subliminally.
could go anywhere.
I know, and we will drift around. Yeah, sure. All right. So many authors set out to write a book, and you said you never planned to write a memoir. What was the moment you realized that you had to tell the story?
Well, so there's a couple of moments, and they're very quick. The first moment is when I was at some point when my everything was falling apart, my marriage, my everything was falling apart. I had this thought, and first I said, okay, I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I believe that, and I believe I'll be stronger when I come out of whatever this is. So I did have that core belief. And then my second thought was, oh my God, I'm in that movie about the alcoholic husband and this and that. And that became my way of coping. I had to find some humor in my journey. Otherwise, I would have gone into a depression. And then eventually, when I got to this part where I'm doing all this online dating later and all this just stuff, I just felt like I was in a Netflix series. And then my life kept getting weirder and crazier, and the irony. And at that point, I said, this is so ridiculous what's happening to me. I have to write about it. And my final moment was like, I can't be the only one who's going through this experience. So, like, it was all these little moments that I look back and I'm like, yes, I really, and Carl Jung talks about how all of our lives, we are writing our own myth, our own story. So, what is the myth that you're living? And I don't know. So, that eventually I just was like, this is so unbelievable. I have to write about it to maybe prove I actually it happened and that I can't be the only one. So, this is going to be helpful to other people.
Okay. Um, hmm. You describe your earlier life, you're a mother, you're a professional, your wife as perfect. You had a perfect life, but you felt a twinge of discontent, actually discontent.
Yeah.
Um, when when did you feel like this whisper became too loud to ignore?
Yeah, I mean, the first whisper is how I start my book. So I'm like, I think I'm in charge of my life. I'm doing life my own way and I'm a mom and I'm working and I'm just like, man, this is just perfect. And I go on this walk with my kids. It's just a normal day. And on the way back, we pass this behind our house and in the ditch is this car axle with one white wall tire on it. And every time we walked by it, my son would go, Mama, wheel broken. What's that? Why is it there? What? And I'm like, oh, the same questions I'm answering again. And then something just stopped me and made me look up. And I was like, oh my gosh, the sun is sparkling through those leaves. And I had this like glimpse into eternity. And then I was like, oh, my heart hurts. And I didn't know how to explain it. It just went from eternity to heartbreak. And I shook it off. I'm like, no way, man. Nope, I do not want to acknowledge that. But it got me thinking about what's going on. And it was like a gentle whisper. Well, then, like, there's the hero's myth, right? The hero story. People don't realize that often there are several invitations extended to the hero, and he or she doesn't answer the first one, or the second one, or the third one. And so the whisper got louder. I finally had to say to my husband, my soul is dying out in the suburbs. What are you talking about? Oh my God, what if our marriage can't survive this? And I was backed away. Right. So every time I sort of came out and was honest about what was going on in my inner world, I ended up backing away. And then eventually I couldn't ignore things. The week that my former husband's drinking climaxed, and it involved something with my son, my business fell apart for strange reasons. And my son said he didn't want to live. And he was struggling in school, and we tried this medication. He was in middle school, and he curled up in a little ball on the floor and said, I don't want to live. And all of that kind of brought me to my knees. And I realized eventually that this was about I had to return my focus to my family and figure out what is happening in my household, in myself. So that was like, okay, I can't ignore whatever this is that I don't even really know what's happening, but it like snapped me, right? It snapped me into, and then I started, and then I led to another synchronicity that led me to pursue this path
That
that
was
would save my soul.
that's the next question. The synchronicities, you just felt these synchronicities are just too powerful to ignore.
Yeah, so this was the crazy one because I was trying to fix things with my mind all along the way, and it just wasn't working. Things just kept getting worse. So, this is a time when I think we moved out of the suburbs and it felt like a redo. We moved to the neighborhood I wanted to move into, and things were pretty stable, actually. And one day I'm like, hey, who wants to go on a walk? And everybody agreed. My two kids and my husband. I was like, oh, cool, let's go on a walk. And we're walking to our little downtown, and it starts to rain. And my former husband is, oh, let's turn back. I'm like, no, it's summer. I love getting caught in a warm summer rain. No, let's go. He was not in sync with that romantic view. And you could see my kids like looking at me and dad. And in that moment, I had a deja vu. And the deja vu was, oh, this dynamic is familiar. I'm the mediator between these two kids and this big kid, and I'm exhausted.
Mhm.
So my go-to was always to talk and to cajole and to inspire. And I thought, I didn't think. I just shut up. And I decided to say nothing. And I said, well, okay, I'm going. They didn't know what to do with that. And they followed me. And we went into this pharmacy, old-fashioned pharmacy, and I got a yoga journal. I was like, I don't know why I'm getting yoga journal. I took it home, and the name of this chapter is Inspiration on the Toilet. I'm going to the bathroom. I'm looking through this magazine, and in the back, I see a logo for Pacifica Graduate Institute, and it says Master's PhD in Depth Psychology, and
Wow.
it's fiery red and orange. And I go, what is that? Oh my
Mm.
God, I don't know what that is, but and I went to my computer, and it was like reading a mysterious sacred scripture. I didn't know what it meant, but I heard of Carl Jung. And I knew in that moment I had to have this and that my soul depended on it. And I plotted in secret how I was going to make this case to my husband to pursue this education. But that was the first time in my life where I made a decision that was based on irrationality. I, I just had to figure out how to get there.
There were accompanying this. There were no dreams or images or anything.
Oh, those all come later.
Oh, okay, okay. Wow. Um, again, I identify with a lot of this stuff because I've done some major changes in my life
Hmm.
out of nowhere that is so far removed
And
from.
it's terrifying.
Oh, it's terrifying, and in some of the readings I was doing, it is, and some of the notes I took, fear in the depth psychology. I did prepare for you, I did prepare. There's a fear of making a wrong decision, and that kind of
Yeah.
keeps you, and that kind of holds you back. That fear that
Yes.
we all have of making a wrong
Yeah.
decision. And I've made so many life-changing decisions, and to battle them, there's that you have to battle that fear, and it's a real fear. Um,
Yeah, well, what I didn't realize, and this is another one of your questions, like what was revealed to me that I didn't know I was hiding from? What is the fear really about? Often we don't really know unless we really go deep. And really what it ended up being was I couldn't even say it, was I didn't want to be married. And I that was not acceptable to me. Not because anybody told me, but because I was like, why would I have to get divorced? I don't see any problem we couldn't overcome, which that was very naive thinking. But I thought, why wouldn't we be able to figure out anything? Right. And I didn't want to know that I didn't feel the same way about my husband. So I could not, that was in my unconscious, and it was trying to reach my conscious awareness, and I did not, which is why all the falling, the drama of my business falling apart and the alcoholism, it was me being in denial and repressing this truth that really made the world around me then get louder and louder until I had to find the truth of the situation. So really the fear, and the fear isn't really as much about the truth as the decisions that need to be made afterwards according to the truth. That's what the fear is. The fear is of the actions and decisions that come after knowing the truth.
Is there also the practical side of this that it's not an easy journey? Did you have to battle the practical side of yourself that it's inconvenient?
Right, but that's not the real fear. That's what we say. Oh gosh,
Oh,
either
oh,
I how am I going to pay my bills or how am I going to, right?
right.
There are always answers that emerge once you surrender to the truth of the situation. Now, this entails developing a trust with the self. So Carl Jung said the self, capital S self, is kind of like this ordering principle in your psyche that prompts you toward growth. It does not determine, it's not fate. It prompts you into situations that do force you to grow. I was the kind of person who was a control freak and a perfectionist because of my childhood, right? And so I thought I was alone in the world. I thought I had to figure things out. So part of my journey was surrendering to this mysterious, influential force and trusting it. That is the only way you can make those difficult decisions. So it was a process for me to recognize, and I fought it. I fought it 18 months. I just dug into myself, dug into myself. And then eventually, as I did my journaling and as I did my reflections, and as I did have some dreams, and one of my dreams was a recurring dream. And I went to a dream tending conference before I could get into Pacifica. And at the end of the first day, the facilitator said, okay, go back to your hotel room tonight. And if you have a recurring dream, ask your psyche to bring that dream.
Wow.
And I was like, what? You could do that? Sure enough, the recurring dream happens, but it's different. My son shows up. And in the dream, I'm running from mercenaries. My reoccurring dream was I'm running from people with machine guns in my childhood home throughout the neighborhood, and I'm terrified. They're just chasing me. And in this dream that night, I run into the bedroom. I'm like, William, my son, we got to go. We got to climb out this window. He's like, Mom, go ahead. It'll be fine. Now, I didn't know. And then the next day, I explored this dream with my partner. And we use Jungian, or Carl Jung developed a concept called active imagination, where in my imagination, I slip back into the dream. But because I was afraid of the mercenaries, I came in the garage door and I come into the living room and there's this shadowy figure, this what I think is a man, and he's wearing a top hat. And the woman says, "What does that mean to you?" And I said, "I don't know. That reminds me of Frank Sinatra. My husband loves Frank Sinatra." I don't know. I didn't know what it meant, but I approached the shadowy figure and I realized I wasn't afraid. And then I sat down in the shadowy figure and I felt nothing. Now, initially, all I took from that dream was I could face whatever I was afraid of, and I didn't know what I was afraid of yet. But a year later and a year after that, I realized that my fear was acknowledging I did not want to be married to my husband anymore. And so it came up to consciousness. Now, I still tried to fix that situation and I couldn't. Eventually, I had to overcome that. And I came to the choice that I needed to divorce. But I came to a position where I knew that was the right thing. So going back to we're afraid to do the wrong thing. If I don't know the right thing to do, I feel paralyzed. But once I know the right thing to do, my fear's gone. I will do very scary things when I know it's the right thing to do. So I broke my husband's heart and that hurt me. But I knew that I had to release him and release me.
Oof. Oof. And you're right that the divorce unleashed demons that the 24-year marriage had protected you from. Um, can you put a description to those demons?
Yes. So the demons are funny. So I
Well,
was
that's
talking
nice to
about
hear.
my
They're funny.
I
Funny.
oh
Funny.
they are It was, you got to find a sense of humor about this thing. So I eventually realized that my unconscious agenda for marrying my husband, consciously, I loved this man, right? We get married because we love each other, right? But unconsciously, in hindsight, I saw that it was marrying him allowed me to escape a very tumultuous and chaotic sexual and relationship experiences. He, I knew, respected me, and I was safe. So again, I'm like, I love this man. Let's build a life together, right? And he appreciated my feminist spirit, and I was looking forward to being partners with this man. So, when my marriage fell apart then, and I knew that I was going to be getting divorced, all of a sudden all these that old stuff came up to the surface, and I had a series of in experiences that happen with men. I like to hang out at bars. I read, I study, have a glass of wine. And oh my gosh, these men would just encroach in my space. And they would be very presumptuous. I mean, men who are like, I want to cook for you. Can I make you dinner? And I'm like, yuck. Like, I literally don't want to talk to you right now. Will you like get out of my space? And so I had these really odd, and one of them is quite dramatic where I feel a lot of shame in this one experience with a man, but that was I had to learn how to relate to men again and find safety in myself. So it sounds weird, but these old things sort of come up and you have to find the deeper meaning of what they mean. So I did learn my lesson and I learned how to choose me and how to not be so polite and be like, dude, back off. So those were the demons had to do with that. And then also, sexuality. During my online dating phase, each of those men, most of whom ended up being all exactly 33 years old. It was very odd. And it was as if they were part of the curriculum. Now I was in school studying depth psychology. And boom, here's the first one. Oh my gosh, what's happening here? And there was a lesson there. And then the next one showed up and tested my boundary setting ability again. I was like, oh my God, here I am again. I can't move. I'm paralyzed. Please, somebody save me. And then there was my PhD man that helped me with sort of feeling insecure about my body and sexuality. And then I started getting braver. And so there was this, those weren't exactly demons, but it was like this phase of learning how to come back into relationship with my sexuality and my body, which is part of coming back to the feminine.
Okay. Um, so the quote younger relationships and younger partners that you had, uh, I'm trying to understand. So that becomes like an energizer for you to like awake. Was that kind of a like a shock?
Yeah. Yes. So often people in midlife unraveling find themselves jumping into somebody's arms. For me, I jumped into Carl Jung. I literally had an affair with Carl Jung. He was my lover, my psychological lover. So I am trying to have stability for my kids. I have a new job and I'm studying. And so I'm at the beach and I'm doing my studying at the tiki bar. And there is a man next to me, and I just feel a little energy. And I'm like, hey. And I see he's trying to get the bartender's attention. And I know the bartender. So I'm like, I got you, dude. Hey, come on over here. He orders his cheeseburger and we get in a conversation. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm busy. I got to study. But he starts asking me about depth psychology.
Wow.
Well, now my intellect is my sex organ, so I'm talking to him, and I don't think anything of it. Except he wants to see if he can sub on my volleyball team. So I'm like, here, give me your email, or your phone number. I'll check with my team. Then he walks away, and I turn around and I'm like, oh my God, my belly is like just warm and fluttery. And I'm like, oh man, there's that. And then I'm like, oh, he seems so young. Was he flirting with me? Is he not? And so I go on to have a sort of awkward experience with him. And he inadvertently opens my faucet sexually because I've been a while. So I do start to like unleash things that have been kind of buried for a while, right? And so I go back and it's pretty crazy actually what happens. And then we have an experience, a sexual experience, and I start having fantasies now about this man. And he sort of falls off the face of the earth. Now I'm angry because I'm like, how dare you open my faucet and leave me wanting? And that leads to my online dating series of men who all happen to be the same age. Now, I only recently realized the significance of 33 is that's my numerology. So 33/6 in numerology has to do with overcoming insecurity, self-doubt, and creative expression.
Wow.
So you can relate to this to the sexuality, spirituality, and creative expression already, but I just got that like 2 weeks ago. So so each of these men impact me in a different way. And they're intellectually, I come into relation, I realize that sexuality is misunderstood by many people, right? So sexuality doesn't always mean you want to have sex with someone. Arousal and being attractive to something in another human being is your unconscious saying, I'm mirroring something back to you that is in you that wants to come alive. I can also mirror things back that you need to change about yourself too, negative things. But it really were these men were bringing something out. They were bringing something to the surface, and they were very short lived. They were 1 or 2 dates. Some of them are my friends. One of them I've interviewed on my podcast. He's in my book. And then after a series of them, boom, done. I'm exhausted from the experience because I like these chemicals are on fire. And I'm like, ah, I need a break. Now, in another question, I talk about how I was doing online dating from an ego perspective. I was in control. After that series of whatever those lessons were I had to learn, 6 weeks later is when I get swept up by the main man, by the main character, who is also 33 years old. Now I'm swept up again. So just like the first synchronicity that had me pursue depth psychology, now Aphrodite has stolen me, and Hermes the trickster is embodied in this man. And it ends up being a very ironic relationship. I am opening up sexually, I'm very inclusive spiritually, and suddenly he says he has a conflict having sex outside of marriage.
Oof.
And I'm like, no, what? Are you kidding me? No,
Wow.
but I want to be with this man. Now, this is how sexuality moves into the spiritual territory. When he says that, my body still says, okay, I want to be with you. And so you ask about dreams and fantasies and images. So when I say, yes, I still want to be with you, I'm like, oh my gosh, we still were so affectionate. And the passion and desire I felt, I never even felt for my husband. And there was no sex or penetration involved. It was simply like just this touch. And during a time when we simply were just laying on each other, I had a Kundalini experience. So as he was sleeping and I was laying on top of him, an image of him between my legs, if I could say this, emerged of him. There he is. Hello, pleasuring me. And that image of him turned into a big, huge snake that wanted to enter me. So I was very uncomfortable, but I heard Carl Jung say, it's a symbol. You have to accept and allow the symbol. And so as I imagined this, I'm having a bodily experience, like welcoming something that feels wrong, welcoming it. And that experience brought me connected with what I perceived at the time to be an ancient feminine realm. This is when sexuality becomes tied to spirituality for me. It's like the beginning of that. And then at a certain point with that relationship, we cannot see each other. We can see each other, but we can't be intimate for a very, because something happens, but I'm not going to tell you because people have to read the book. But during that time, I developed a sense of loyalty to this relationship for very mysterious reasons. And what that did is it kept me focused on my inner work. And this brought me into deeper relationship with myself, which is the bridge to the divine. So the stronger your relationship with your inner self, the more direct your relationship is to God, the quantum realm, whatever you want to call it. And that resulted in me having spiritual orgasms,
Wow. Wow.
having experiences that I could never have actually with a human being.
Wow.
And then
Wow.
that got me thinking and journaling, and that led to my research. So actually, my PhD research explores women's experience of reconciling sexuality and spirituality. So remember what I said, that what my marriage kept me safe from. I didn't realize I had this split between sexuality and spirituality, sex and God inside me. And so my journey was coming into relationship with the body, sexuality, and that leads to me having a deeper relationship with spirituality or God. So it's kind of like, the title of the book, When Sex Meets God, is like, what happens when sex meets God? Sex shows up and meets God, and then what's happened? That's literally like what happened.
Wow.
So I was drawn to this man because of the body, the physical, and then I was forced to transcend the physical and go into the spiritual. And when sexuality and spirituality, and Carl Jung says the most powerful human instincts are sex and God, religion. So, sex not meaning literal sex, but sex is desire, creative intelligence that flows through us, right? Sexual energy is why Mark Zuckerberg developed Facebook. He was angry because of his romantic experience. He channeled that energy, right? Social network.
Yeah.
And then religion, I mean, God isn't about religion, it's about the search for meaning. So, when those two things play together, they they create a baby. They create creative expression that can be a human baby, but it's also a book. It's also an idea. It's also an enhanced understanding of the relationship with the other. So that's what happens. And that's kind of what I lived and what I researched.
Wow. I wrote down, I'm taking notes. I'm an interviewer that takes notes, you know.
Me too. I do too.
Okay.
When
Yeah.
I interview, I do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Not too many of us do that, but I take notes because it's important. But you also said a while back, choose me. You had to choose me, and it's funny. I did a couple of things recently. One earlier today, actually, when my guest said I have to choose me, and then 2 weeks ago I knew this a Reiki healer, Indian American, amazing woman, and she wrote a book called Choose Yourself. And then putting all this together, I had an epiphany that I'm not that well read psychologically. I did play the Blacks and Whites, a game from Psychology Today in the 60s. But I did read Ayn Rand's Virtue of Selfishness, and my own little small little we're off topic here. My small little microcosmic world, I realized that the virtue of selfishness is really a good thing in a marriage because
Yeah.
I can't be a good person unless I take care of myself first, so that I can be giving and loving and all this
Yeah.
stuff. So is that really off topic? So is the virtue of selfishness a valid? Is,
Yeah, I mean, I have difficulty with Ayn Rand because of Atlas Shrugged, but I think that this is misunderstood
okay,
because to be selfish or to focus on self doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want.
okay,
especially when it harms other people. But here's a way to think about what the dark side of not being selfish. So a lot of people wear as a badge that they're giving. So you might have overheard of like the overgiver, right? There's a light and a dark side. It really has to do with your motivation, right? So many people give because it makes them feel good. So then they're not giving from a pure heart, right? So when we do things out of obligation, not to mean that there aren't things that we have to be responsible for, but if there's resentment, then whatever we're giving is not from a pure heart. It's dysfunction, it's toxic. Now, there also are people who are selfish who are do have they suffer from narcissism. The root of narcissism is intense insecurity. It's not arrogance, it's insecurity. So it's problematic, right? So you can see how it's a delicate thing to understand what that means, the virtuous self.
Okay.
So, this is where the body can be very helpful when you present yourself with a choice. Okay, this person wants me to do this. I want to do this. And you put your hand on your vagus nerve, your body, and you see how that sits with your body. If there is a peacefulness to it, that's the right thing to do. If there's not a peacefulness to do, then you might have to speak up and say, I have to say no to this right now. Because if I say yes, I might feel resentment, and then I'm not really being altruistic.
Wow.
So it's not, our society and social media has a way of making you say this or that, and it's never this or that. There's a light side, there's a dark side, and then there's sort of everything in between.
Great.
So that's a long answer to your question, but
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, like I said, I don't delve into this stuff, but it suddenly popped up a few times and it
hmm
kind of made me think, and there you are. Um, one another off-topic question. I know the answer. Isn't this funny? I know the answer, I think. I'm big shot. I borrowed this journalistic question from Barbara Walters, who I love. She was just so she was just so
I mean, there aren't any interviewers like that
no,
anymore.
and there never will be.
Yeah.
I mean, she just threw away all the rules that men made, and
Yes.
and was such a pace setter, and wound up interviewing some of the most amazing people
Yeah.
on the planet that she defied, and
Yeah.
so I have a list of some of the things she used to ask, and I don't mind plagiarizing. It's a sign of respect and love and
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely.
So again, Deborah, I think I know the answer, but one of her questions is. Deborah, I'm being animated now. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with. I know the answer. Maybe I don't.
Oh, man.
Yeah, well, there could be a few. There's no rules here.
Yeah, there are a few. You probably think it's Carl Jung, right?
Yeah, I sure do. I'm a
Yeah,
wise
I
guy.
mean, yes, he trained many women analysts.
Oh,
He brought out their animus. You had anima animus in one of the questions. They're masculine and respected them. Now, I think there was also probably a little like complex with some of those women too. And some of them went on, I mean, very interesting. So, yeah, I probably would like to spend the day with him. But you know who else? Oh God, there's so many spiritual people too. Um, I mean, I'd like to hang with Oprah for a day. I was addicted to Super Soul Sunday during my unraveling and Joe Dispenza because I was looking for answers. I just was like, I was desperate to see who had an answer for me. So I would watch hours of Super Soul Sunday and I thought, man, that's not even a job for her. She's basically being a student And she is one of the few interviewers that can talk as much as her guest because what she's doing is she's mirroring back to them what she thinks she's hearing from them. So she's constantly affirming her understanding of what they're saying. So I think I have a podcast too. And I think when I interview people, I tend to do the same thing. We're more having a conversation than I'm interviewing them because I want to understand at a deeper level. But yeah, Carl Jung and Oprah, and I think the three of us would have a great time together.
I did quote kind of meet her a few years ago. She had she had produced a movie called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks about
Oh,
that. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It wasn't really in pop culture, but it was a woman, an African American woman, I don't know, 20s or 30s. They found that she had great cells that resisted disease. So they took her cells and they've been using her cells for 50 years.
I do know this story, but I
Yeah.
did not see that.
Yeah, and so Oprah produced the movie about the book,
Wow.
and Oprah was in the movie, and they're still using, and she never got a dime, obviously, because she was African American,
Yeah.
never got a dime, and they're still using. She had remarkable cells that they're still using in medical science.
Oh my God,
Uh,
that's amazing.
so yeah, uh,
Oprah showed up in my dreams a couple times. And
so
like I would have a fantasy image and I would just be like, "Oh my God, no, I'm too small. No, no." Like when she would show up in my dream, I was like, it scared me.
uh, I mean, she was on top of my list to get her to read The Tortoise in My Hair because she'd love it for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
I've had an interesting journey.
Yeah.
I've had an interesting journey
Yeah.
with my commitment to civil rights. Born in the '60s, questioning and it's been
Yeah.
part of me. So, and my first novel, I actually have a chapter which was written 20 plus years ago before anybody ever heard of Emmett Till. Uh,
Mm.
I wrote,
Mm. Oh.
yeah, I wrote a half a chapter with my character, which is me, first novel, Vichy Water, going out to the Borough Oak Cemetery in Chicago and spending a day at the grave of Mamie, his mother,
Mm.
and him
Wow.
because it moved me so much. All
Wow.
that stuff has moved me so much.
Yeah.
I saw Easy Rider when it came out in the late '60s, early '70s, and I've never gone down south after seeing that. I don't even
Mm.
want to go to South Jersey.
Yeah.
I'm a funny
Yeah.
kind of guy that way.
Yeah.
But the spirits rewarded me.
Yeah.
The synchronistic spirits rewarded me for my caring and my concern because long story, I won't get into it, but I had a chance to give a copy of Vichy Water to Emmett Till's
Oh
cousin,
my gosh.
Reverend
Wow.
Wheeler Parker, who was in the next room when the Klan came to pull
Mhm.
him out of that place in Mississippi that summer in '55.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
Wheeler Parker was in the next room. He was his cousin. And
Oh.
they went into Wheeler Parker's room and they said, "No, he's not the one." And they left him alone. So, of
Oh my
course, he
God.
grew up and became a reverend and speaks on that. And if
Mm.
it was actually a few weeks before the pandemic hit in 2020, he was speaking at Rutgers. I'm a Rutgers guy.
Oh.
And I took a copy of Vichy Water and said, "There's a half a chapter devoted to your cousin and his mother. Here's a copy of my book." So, I mean,
Wow.
that to me was full circle.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Absolutely. Oh
All
man.
right. Back to work. Back to work. You kind of talked about the beginning to talk about when sex meets God, uh, um, uh, and your bio mentions a collision of spirituality and sexuality. Can you take us back that first moment when you sense these two forces were kind of intertwining in your life? You sort of covered that a little bit. Um, um, Oh, you froze. Are you okay? We're back. I just got a little. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Well, I'm going to stop recording.
There we go.
Oh, okay, we're back.
You're back.
All right, we're back.
I
I'm
didn't say anything, so
no, all right. Did you hear the question I asked?
I
Just, we were talking about your bio talks about a collision of spirituality and sexuality. Um, when did you sense that these two things were intertwining? And you kind of touched on it, but these two forces, when were they intertwining in your life? Because that's powerful stuff.
yeah. So, let me see if because I wrote down a couple of things. I mean, I, yeah, it was, oh, there's a lot of different moments, but I mentioned the Kundalini moment. So it was exactly when um literal sex like shut the door on me. And that was a moment, right? So I could have said, "Oh, I'm done with this guy." And something in me um said, "No, there's something to explore here." And I experienced things that I would have never experienced. And so, and then it's interesting because after that experience, about a month later, the relationship is very interesting because I talk a lot about sort of what I suspect was going on beneath the surface of this man as well. So he had very rigid religious beliefs, and while he didn't use alcohol in the same way, I mean, my book really talks about addiction as well. While he didn't use alcohol the same way as my former husband sort of used it not to feel. He, my lover, used alcohol to feel what, when he was sober, he felt a lot of shame about. So when he would drink, this passion and this desire that was very exaggerated came out. And so then, but then it would go underground again. And so I just was, it was in those moments that I even in the book say I felt moved to journal about the connection between sexuality and spirituality. And while I couldn't be with him intimately, but I would see him and we would just have conversations throughout this time period, this this allure, this desire, this attraction never went away. It still isn't gone. You asked a question about like what surprised me, or I forget the question, like what had such what something that had an impact on me that was surprising, and it is still him as a figure. There is like it is so mysterious that there's still something there that's working on my unconscious, even though I haven't seen him in 2 years. But yeah, so I don't know if they're like those are the two, those are specific moments. And then and well, this is gonna sound funny. I have one other little story. So I'm on a drive and I'm listening. I decided to listen to a Christian music station. Just, I don't know. And it occurred to me that these different genres of pop music, top 40 music, country music, and spiritual music represent these different aspects of our lives. So, top 40 music is like, it's our instincts, like we give into our instincts. It's romance, it's sexuality, it's like all this stuff, right? And then country music often is like when you crash and burn, right? It's these sad stories. And then the spiritual is recovering, and what is the meaning that we find and what are the lessons that we learned, and then we kind of like rinse and repeat again. So one day on a drive I'm having this thought, and then I decide to listen to Michael Bernard Beckwith. So he's a spiritual teacher and he wrote a book called Revisioning Your Life or something like that. So I'm listening to him, and he says this thing in the audiobook. He says, "Are you ready?" He asks, "What is emerging from you?" Okay, so we talk about a birth, a death, and a rebirth, right? What is emerging from you? And he says, "Are you ready to vision or envision this? What is this?" And in that moment, I'm driving and I felt so aroused that I had to like do something about it. As I'm driving, I'm like, I hope nobody's looking at me. But I was so overcome with arousal at that spiritual question. And so things would keep happening to me like that, where there is this spiritual and there's this creative thing, this creative urge. What is coming out of me? Not a literal baby, but I don't know what's coming out of me. And it's the desire, the sexuality, that arousal is part of the recipe, it's part of the ingredients. And so I would just continue. And then when I was not able to be with this man, except in confined circumstances, and I would be in meditation. And I bought a prayer book. I could meditated, I read prayers, and I had this moment where I felt something transcendent remove a burden from my shoulders. Like I felt it. Like I felt the weight. And I was like, I'm not alone. And I had felt like I was alone before. And then I had images of light coming out of my head and into my head. I'm like, is it coming out? Is it coming in? I think it's doing both. And that again was arousing as well. Now, I didn't tell anybody about, I didn't tell him. His head would have exploded if I told him God was giving me orgasms. So, but these are these moments that I was at the mercy of something mysterious, right? So you have had your experiences. Mine have to do with this wound of sexuality and spirituality and the disconnect that is present in our society. And so that's my unique contribution.
Wow. Powerful stuff. Oof. All right.
And crazy.
Yeah. Hey, do you have any favorite movies? I'm trying to
I
balance.
have I have many favorite
I,
movies.
I,
So, okay,
I love asking that.
another offshoot of depth psychology is Jungian film theory.
Oh,
Ugh. So
oh,
I have an experience, and I do bring up some pivotal movies in my book. So dreams,
oh.
fantasies, and also specific movies. So during my midlife, I guess it would be the reconstruction part, there were a series of movies. The most well, there's the personal first. So in this work of Carl Jung calls individuation, your process of coming to explore your unconscious. There's the personal aspect first, the parental complexes, the mother wound, the father wound, all of that kind of stuff. And so there were certain movies that I experienced. Oh, I got an insight that I wouldn't have gotten in therapy, but I got through the watching of this movie. Then there was the class where I blurted out that I wanted to write about the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon because I went to see the movie and I was very intrigued by the extreme of reactions to it, from liberation to kind of ignorance and like judgmental about it. And I thought, oh, I'm just interested in it. And that was the beginning of me being led to exploring sexuality and spirituality. But jump ahead. Now I'm more open to the archetypal realm being swept up, right? And the archetypal realm is about what is going on in the collective. So, how does my personal experience relate to the collective? So, these are very pivotal movies for me. Alita Battle Angel, saw it 8 times.
Wow.
And it's very much about the masculine and the feminine in this battle for the feminine to reassert itself. And they were all superhero movies. Aquaman. I saw Aquaman came out after I read a book by Robin Robertson called Beginner's Guide to Revelation. So it is a Jungian interpretation of the book of Revelation from the Bible. And I read that and I was like, oh my God, I totally can make sense of what's happening in the world right now from a Jungian interpretation of that book. Of course, nobody knows what the book of Revelation means. Theologists don't know. It was a dream, Jungian. And so I saw Aquaman and I was like, oh my God, this is the book of Revelation. Like I literally experienced Aquaman, the film, as this is the reckoning that's trying to happen right now. The ultimate reconciliation of the split between the masculine and the feminine, between heaven and earth, between the body and the mind. All of that manifests in different ways. Captain Marvel, of course, and Black Panther. Oh, there's another one. The Black Panther is a spiritual symbol. So that's sort of and I had an experience where during the night, I thought a Black Panther showed up in my bedroom and I was afraid, but it was a kind of fear that is like reverence. You know what reverence means? Reverence is like inspiring and fearful, proper fear of God, right? You feel fearful, you feel small, insignificant. And I couldn't roll over, but I felt its warm breath on me. And that led me to journal and explore the image and led me to my colleague who had become a pastor and led me to his church. And so for 6 months, I went to his womb of love. And so, you can relate because you talk about all these little synchronicities. And so those are some of I have other movies from the 80s that shaped me. Alien, Sigourney Weaver being being the first woman protagonist that could kick
Correct.
alien ass.
Correct.
Thelma and Louise, where they choose death over oppression. So, yeah, I love Jungian film theory.
Interesting. I'm so glad I asked that.
Yeah.
Just, I like to ask that because to me, it's a little picture into, the soul a little
Yeah.
bit.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite questions to ask. Okay, uh, moving on. We're making a decision here. There's a lot more. I'm just looking at my notes. There's
Yeah,
a lot.
you just pick whatever you want.
All right, I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna. Because I want to keep this so folks can. Um. Uh. Let's see. I like this. How does your depth psychology coaching, because you're a coach, help
Mhm.
people uncover their unconscious, what their unconscious is trying to communicate? So, what does depth psychology help
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, so, the difference between a depth approach and a conventional approach is the conventional approach really stays in the mind. And the mind is defensive by nature, neuroscience wise. The mind only wants to affirm and confirm your either conscious beliefs and your unconscious beliefs. So you won't get anywhere. So my approach is to invite the unconscious of the client to the discussion to have a dialogue. So how do we do that? I wrote a book called Your Soul is Talking. Are You Listening? Where I outline all the different ways your unconscious is trying to get your attention all day long. The most popular or the most common way that with my clients we explore their unconscious is through dreams. So that would be the most common way. Also in debriefing, like their experiences with conflict. So if they're like, oh, I just had a fight with my lover, I just had a fight with my mother, whatever it is, we do what I call is debriefing, where we unravel it and we pick it apart. We find out where all the pivot points are and then find out, that emotion is from something very old. So then memories. So then I might say, what is your earliest memory of feeling that way? Boom, we get right there. And then active imagination, which I mentioned before. So, getting them into a relaxed state, using breathing, checking in with the body, seeing what part of their body is trying to speak, and then asking them to see what image emerges, pulling the image out of the body and having a dialogue with it or following it. So those are things that don't really happen in therapy, but it is amazing how you get to the root and the truth of it so much faster
Oh,
than you would in conventional therapy.
wow. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Um, as I'm selecting things, I'm trying to get a full broad spectrum. Um, and you mentioned this earlier. How did you overcome your fear of being judged especially by people who you loved? And, and that it's part of my life. That fear thing. Um,
It's interesting because I've always been a misfit. I've always been a nerd. So to a certain extent, I don't really care. Like I learned early on that certain women didn't like me, right? And I learned that that was more about them than me. And I think, when I think about the two things, the two messages that I took out of childhood into the life were my mother said, "You can do anything." She was, came up in the age of Marlo Thomas, right? Free to be you and me. And you could do anything, girls. I have two sisters. But she undermined me constantly because her mother wound she came from a very abusive situation and she was so intent on being a better mother that she burdened me with proving that. And the only way she could feel like she was a good mother was for me to be perfect, right? So think about that. Those are two messages. There's a great message, you can do everything, but you're, not really quite good enough, right? So I take that out into the world. And I told you before that if I don't know the right thing to do, I feel paralyzed. But when I know what the right thing is to do, nothing can stop me. And I don't really care what people think. So for most of my life, I really haven't concerned myself, except for like what people I really respect think, right? So, if my mentor, says something that I listen, right? But I know that their motivation is right. So, and then that relates to you asked another question about like people who are going to read my book, right? And so maybe they think whatever, they're going to have opinions about it. And I don't really care. What I really did care about was how I presented my former husband and, you know, my kids. No, I mean, because I didn't write anything negative about them, but my former husband, because I do talk about the complexity of a marriage, a long-term relationship. But all my beta readers, I probably have 50 people read it before it was done. I was pleasantly surprised that many of them said, "Man, I felt compassion for your husband." And I was like, "Well, good. That means that I wrote about him in a respectful way, honoring his experience." And then what was funny about my lover, my swept up relationship, is people were really annoyed with him. So I thought, this is perfect. This is unexpected in a pleasant way.
okay. Yeah, good old beta readers. I never knew what that was until uh, this trip with the billionaire. Beta readers. I love hearing that term.
Yeah,
All
because I would never publish a book without having a lot of them.
correct. So I'm learning. I'm learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love when I'm learning at 80.
Yes.
I'm supposed to be sitting. My idea of 80 was sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair, drinking prune juice on the rocks. That was 80, and probably still is for a lot of people. But anyway, two more questions because we could.
Okay.
Uh, um, do you believe humanity is in a collective unraveling of old paradigms around relationships? And this is really interesting. Relationships, spirituality, identity is everything that's just being thrown in this big pot, this stew. Are we unraveling in a way?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. I like that you say stew
Yeah.
because that reminds me of alchemy. So, Carl Jung studied alchemy and he realized that it was a psychological process that had little to do with the literal desire to turn lead into gold. Like it's very, very interesting. And I remember in 20, let's see, my one of my last courses was probably in 2017, and it was a course on alchemy. And my professor was like, asked the same question. So this was 10 years ago.
Hmm.
A lot has happened since then, and we already could see what was happening. That yes, there is a dismantling going on, and it does relate to this ultimate healing between the feminine and the masculine. right? And you can tell that the structures are dismantling all the structures that are rooted in patriarchy, which is a one-sided masculine that manifests in many different ways. They are clinging to survive right now. So late stage capitalism is a thing, right? They are clinging, and that is the indication that they are coming down. So now one of my roles in this world is to help people do this work, because as you come into deeper relationship with your personal unconscious, you are available to go out into the world and show up in a different way. And one of the things that's happening is, the increase in belligerence and violent words and all of that. What is happening, those people are very wounded, of course, but what is happening is it's forcing other people to deal with why that bothers them, to deal with their triggers, right? So when you can disarm your emotional reactions to that nonsense, your executive function works better. And you can show up number one in a way that you're thinking clearly and being more effective about how to change, right? And you can also just realize you just leave the nonsense alone. Advocate for people who are being targeted. Definitely do that. But we need to start imagining what is coming next. And there's amazing things happening. One of my colleagues, Dr. Craig Chalquist, he has two PhDs. He has a community, a wisdom community, and they are imagining what is happening. And they are talking about how the hero is not an individual anymore. The hero is the collective. The hero is community. Black Adam is a great movie. It's a superhero movie. The Rock is in it. Black Adam is this like, he's a bad guy, but at the end, he helps the good guys and they save society, whatever it is. And the people are around him, and there's this rubble and there's this throne. And they all are like, "Oh, you need to go sit up on the throne. You're our leader." And he gets up there and he's like, "Oh, this feels kind of good." Nope. Nope. It's up to you people. So this is part of what's happening, is the power of the individual, right? So Carl Jung, my favorite quote of his goes something like this: "The fate of humanity depends upon the self-reflecting individual to resist mass-minded ideas
Wow.
and rigid religious ideas and things like
Wow.
that." So as we do our work and we're less triggered, we can disrupt, and we can do this. Actually, the psychology of nonviolent resistance is disrupting a unconscious pattern, because the people who are belligerent, they don't realize they have a monster inside, and they are feeding off of your negative reaction. So you're giving your power away. So if you can disarm the root of your trigger, you can go like, "Oh, dude, that's cute. Oh, that's so cute when you're mean. Oh, I feel bad for you." Now you have power, or you can be silent. So that is the meaning of my work with my clients.
Great.
So they can show up in this craziness.
I worry listening to that quote, the fate of humanity is resistance. I don't, I worry there's not enough of us to resist. Uh,
Well, there doesn't have to be a majority, you realize. There
uh,
has to be about a third, a tipping point. And
okay.
this is why it's important that you're connected to these other sources of information and community, so you know what's happening. There are groups, various groups, that are talking about the future of democracy in its next form. It might not even be called democracy, for example. There are TED Talks being sponsored everywhere, where there's competitions to get people who have ideas. And, the importance of Marianne Williamson, who the country wasn't ready for that kind of spirituality, but she is part of the infrastructure of the conversation now. So she knows more about history than most of our elected officials. And, she talks about how our founding documents are spiritual documents, not Christian documents. They're spiritual. It was a moral statement that we never lived up to. So to me, it's exciting, but right? So you have to know what's happening. You have to be there and advocate for the people who are being attacked and scapegoated. And at the same time, you have to do your own spiritual work. So you know that you're part of ushering in something that we don't know what it looks like yet, but we know it is happening. And
Yeah.
consciousness always expands, and it's always about love. So you just sort of have to have that core belief.
Okay. Well, I came out of the 60s, love child and all that stuff.
Yeah. So
You
you've
know,
been through kind of a round of what we're
yeah,
going through.
I've been through, and I'm going
Stakes are
through it.
higher now, but
Yeah, yeah, and I'm going through it again,
yeah.
and I try to. Yeah, I was very active in the environmental stuff. I had a group, global group. We used to get together and talk and stuff. Um, but we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop the Earth from heating 1.5. Now we have to concern how we're going to live with it. I think we.
Yeah. And there's also a vibrational shift happening on the
Well,
earth. The
but
freak it's not only that though, not only the climate, but there is an energetic frequency shift. And so, oh, I'm going to send you some stuff about quantum theory and how there really is literally like two sort of realities forming. And one of the realities is people that are trapped in fear-based. And the other reality are people who are raising their vibration and their frequency. And collectively, this does impact the earth, right? So the earth is also smarter than we think. So there's a lot of ways that it is like prompting, nudging, but I don't know. I do think that, I mean, the number of channels that are about this stuff and our role, and it's very clear what to do. We don't have to have particular answers, but when we are in a receptive mode, the answers appear. The answers come, and it's happening to a lot of different people all over the place. And what happens is that all that individual inner reconciliation pops up into the collective. Boom, boom, boom. So in the 80s, um, there was a great unleashing out of the collective unconscious when it had to do with women, right? So remember in the 80s, finally, all 50 states made it illegal for a man to rape his wife. Fine, right? Violence Against Women Act happened. Record numbers of women running for office, the changing norms around this. That pressure was building for a long time. And then boom, it all sort of came out. So we can't see what's about to be unleashed in that way. But it is happening. And the desperation of sort of the evil villains and the incompetence and the mistakes, the arrogance, so, if you can like step back and go, okay, this is to a certain extent, I can see the bigger picture of what's happening, then it's very inspiring. Then you're like, I got to get to work. How do I be part of this?
Well, I know things are happening. I have my little pet saying now. When I grew up, when I came out of the 60s, things changed every 10 years. It was the 60s, the 70s, the 80s.
Yeah.
Now it's my belief things change every 15 minutes.
It's accelerate. Yes. Yeah. And that's hard for people. So
Yeah.
again, how do I help people? I bring a framework that can help them navigate, find their grounding, find their sense of purpose, not be too freaked out by uncertainty, because that's the anxiety is the collective uncertainty of we know it's fallen down, but we don't know what's replacing it. And so we have to have a sort of framework that we can walk into the unknown and trust.
Mm, okay. Last question. I don't want it to be the last question, but last question.
I'll come back.
I would love you to come back.
Yeah.
Really, truly, just, there's a bunch of other things I said I'm not going to bring this up now because,
Yeah.
you know,
I've
uh,
got regulars. I have regular guests on my podcast. They come back like 3 times a year.
yeah, I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
absolutely. We'll communicate and stuff. And when I read memories, dreams, and reflections and stuff, and I take notes, I always take notes,
Mhm.
and I'll be in touch to tell you to come back. So, where do you think your journey's taking you in the next 5 years?
This is such a great question. I am now used to being more comfortable not knowing. So I kind of don't know, but I do have some specific things. I want to get my story in the hands of thousands of people because it's not just my story. And, there are lots of different readers who will like it. People who like a midlife unraveling story, people who are into this like intertwining nature of sexuality, spirituality. It's written in sort of I don't know. People like the way I write erotically because it's not because it's just a different experience. I do want it to turn into a series or movie on Netflix or whatever streaming platform. And I want to be more creative about how to use my gifts and talents. I don't want to only do individual coaching because that's very limiting and it's also very like intensive. I help people and organizations see what they can't see. I can see what other people don't see, and I can help them know what they don't know.
By the way, you're kind of
Um,
scary,
yeah.
as I'm sitting here and listening to you, I'm saying to myself, she's scary because she could read right through me,
Well, and it's
which is fine.
it's not for nefarious purposes. I'm
Right.
simply curious and I can and the things I want people to see for themselves are empowering things, right? So, but I used to work with nonprofits. My last business, I was a consultant for nonprofits and schools. And I had a way, and some people will call me a therapist for nonprofits and schools. So I've always had a way of like helping people embrace feeling stupid for a while. I'd say, you're going to feel dumb. I'm going to ask you to do some things and you're going to feel dumb, but then you're going to feel less dumb. And then eventually you're going to feel competent. So I don't know. I have a way with people and also I have a neurodivergent brain and I'm an introverted, intuitive, feeling, judging person. So I can make connections that other people they don't see the pattern. And so I see patterns that other people can't see.
You are a gift.
Well, thank you. So are you.
Well, thank you too. Yeah, you are. I'm just sitting here and marveling and absorbing and taking notes, and I realized I'm sitting here with a gift.
So I want to like be more creative about my gift.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And I'm open.
yeah, and of course my little parenthetical job uh is maybe to facilitate screenplays, this, that, stuff, and I'm going to work with you on that. So, uh Deborah, we finished this session, and I will invite you to come back because there's lots of stuff to talk. And my philosophy, what I learned from the billionaires, you got to keep throwing stuff on a wall. Keep throwing it on the wall, keep throwing it on the wall, and something's going to
Yeah,
stick.
that's
And,
right.
and your
Outreach, outreach,
message,
outreach. The only
yeah,
thing I was trained in consultative selling. My first career was a financial advisor. So, the only thing you can control is your outreach, your effort.
yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, because there's so much that you can't control, and you
Yeah.
can just throw it on a wall and see what happens.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, just thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me for so long.
Hmm.
I felt I was on a couch early on, and I've never been on a couch before. So
I love it.
you were my first couch experience.
Oh, I love it.
Truly. Well, I'm an old-fashioned guy, and nobody's going to tell me what to do. I'm not going
Yeah.
to ask directions. I told you that. But anyway, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm going to stop recording now, and we're going to get you to come back.
Okay. Thank you so
And
much.
yeah, thank you, Deborah. You
You're
really
welcome.
did make my day. Wow, truly.
Good.
Stay right there. I'm just going to stop recording.